What's going on, everybody? Stylus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G 2023 and the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G. Now, as always, if you do end up wanting to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Moto G Stylus 5G, we're getting a 6.6-inch 120Hz IPS LCD display with a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 399, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. And with the A23 5G, honestly the display is pretty much the same. We're also getting a 6.6-inch display with a 120Hz refresh rate. This display is a PLS LCD, which honestly is really not that much different. We're also getting a 1080p resolution here, a PPI of 400, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. So again, these displays are pretty much the same. When it comes to the overall aesthetics of the phone, just because the bezels are slightly thinner and the hole punch front-facing camera looks a bit nicer, I would personally say the Moto G Stylus 5G has a tiny advantage. But when it comes to the actual quality and overall specs of the displays, again, they are so similar that in general, if you're consuming a lot of content or browsing the web, using social media, stuff like that, you're really gonna get just about the same experience. And in that regard, they both are really good, they look super nice. So if you are looking for an affordable 5G phone that has a really nice display, you're not gonna go wrong with either phone here. For storage, with the Moto G Stylus 5G 2023, first of all, I do want to point out, this phone in my hand is factory unlocked, and if you end up getting it from a carrier, the storage will most likely be a bit different. But this phone in my hand does have 256GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and if you get it from a carrier, it's most likely going to have 128. Whereas with the A23 5G, this phone has 64GB with microSD card expansion as well. So honestly, either way, no matter which version you get, the Moto G Stylus 5G will have an advantage. But if you are someone who really wants a ton of storage, then I definitely recommend getting this phone factory unlocked. On the other hand, with the A23, honestly, I feel like with 64GB, for the average user, it might be a little tight if you're downloading lots of apps and stuff. But if you have lots of photos and videos, for example, you can always offload that onto a microSD card. And in general, even at this point in 2023, 64GB isn't terrible, so if you're maybe a more light, casual user, it is still at least acceptable. But of course, if storage is more of a priority for you, I would definitely go with the Motorola. For security features, both phones have face unlock, and they both have fingerprint scanners right here on the power keys, so definitely a great spot for a fingerprint scanner. But starting with the Moto G Stylus 5G, let's give them a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the Samsung. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, both fingerprint scanners worked real well. No issues at all. And again, both phones have face unlock too, so definitely nice to get both options. For the cameras, with the Moto G Stylus 5G, up front, again, we got a real nice looking hole punch design for the selfie camera. This camera is 16 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a dual camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera and an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera. And keep in mind, this ultra wide camera also doubles as a macro camera. And then for video, this phone can record 4K videos in the rear camera and 1080p in the front. So definitely nice to see there. I haven't seen a Moto G phone that can record 4K videos since the 4G version of the Stylus 2021. So a couple years now. And at this point in 2023, the option to record 4K videos is definitely a nice thing to have. And then with the A23 5G, we got a water drop notch for the selfie camera. This camera is 8 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. And unfortunately, this phone can't record 4K videos. It does max out at 1080p in both the rear and front cameras. But in general, aside from the video recording, the features are pretty much the same. Despite the Motorola having a few different things condensed into a couple cameras, they both have ultra wide cameras, macro cameras, all that stuff. So in general, if you're looking for a phone that has a decent amount of camera features, either phone will be a great choice. But again, if you do want to record 4K videos, the Motorola will have an advantage. To give you an idea of what they can do, first, here's some pictures taken with the Moto G Stylus 5G. Overall, definitely great quality here, and despite of course not being nearly as high quality as say a top of the line flagship phone, for the average user, I do think the photo quality here is perfectly fine for most things. So if you're maybe taking Instagram photos, sending things to friends and family, or maybe even taking vacation photos for your own memories, for that kind of use, I feel like you're not really going to need much better than this. And then here are some pictures taken with the A23 5G and really same kind of thing. I feel like there's not really a huge difference between the two when it comes to photo quality. Sure, some of this is more or less based on preference, so when it comes to which one is actually better between the two, I'll let you decide that for yourself. But in general with the A23, just like with the Moto G Stylus 5G, I do think the photo quality we get with this phone is perfectly fine for casual daily use. So overall, if you're looking for an affordable phone that has a great camera, you're not going to go wrong with either phone here. For the RAM and processor, with the Moto G Stylus 5G 2023, we're getting 6GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 6 Gen 1 processor. With the A23 5G, we're getting 4GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 695 5G. Now when it comes to overall performance, on one hand with the A23 5G, this phone is definitely fast enough for probably most people, and if you're doing more basic daily activities like web browsing, social media, watching videos, stuff like that, you're really not going to go wrong with this phone. I've personally done quite a bit on it and I haven't had any performance issues or lagging or slowdowns or anything like that, so I really have no complaints here. That being said though, between the two, I would say the Moto G Stylus 5G in general is a bit faster. Maybe not by a whole lot, but if you're going to be on your phone a bit more doing stuff like mobile gaming for example that's a little bit more demanding, then I do think in general you will get a better experience with the Motorola. But again, for most everyday use, the A23 5G is definitely good enough to get the job done. Now I ran a benchmark test on each phone here using Geekbench 6, and here are the results I got. So again, as you can see here, between the two, the Moto G Stylus 5G did score a bit better. So again, if you want the faster phone here, definitely keep this in mind. But again, in my experience, the A23 5G does have really good performance too. And for a mid-range phone, I still feel like these scores are pretty impressive. Now both phones here have 5000 mAh batteries, with the Moto G Stylus 5G supporting 20W fast charging and the A23 5G supporting 25. So really not a significant difference here. Yeah, the fast charging with the Samsung is slightly better, but I mean 5 watts, not really much of a difference. And also keep in mind, to actually use the fast charging to its fullest, you will need a 20W and 25W fast charger, which neither of these phones has. The Motorola comes with a wall adapter at least, but I think it's like 10 watts, whereas with the Samsung you don't get one at all. So yeah, you will have to get one yourself, but in general, when you do have a decent fast charger, for most people I would say the charging speed with either phone is good enough. And for the battery life, of course with a 5000 mAh battery, you can't expect great battery life for either phone here. So if that's a priority for you, you're really not going to go wrong either way. And then of course down the road as the batteries degrade, which all batteries do, you're not going to notice it nearly as quickly as you would with a much smaller battery. So if you like to keep one phone for a longer time without having to replace it, either phone here will be a great choice. For the software, both phones have Android 13, but when it comes to long-term software support, I personally would trust the Samsung a bit more. With Motorola, the updates are kind of unpredictable. Like for example, the Moto G Stylus 4G 2022 got the update from Android 11 to Android 12, so that's good at least, but the 5G came with Android 12, and it still hasn't gotten Android 13 yet. So yeah, with the Moto G Stylus 5G 2023, I'd like to assume this phone will eventually get Android 14 at some point after it comes out, but I really wouldn't count on it. Again, it may or may not happen, and if it does, I have no idea when. Whereas with the A23 5G, in addition to having Android 13, this phone will be getting Android 14, 15, and 16, and I'm pretty sure it's going to get Android 14 like in December, probably right around the time it comes out. So in general, if software support is important to you, definitely go with the Samsung. But if you just want Android 13 and you don't really care about the rest, then again, both phones do have Android 13, so either will be fine. When it comes to other features, both phones have NFC, so if you like to use tap and pay, you won't have to worry about that. And of course, as the name implies, the Moto G Stylus 5G does in fact have a stylus, making it one of the few non-flagship phones with this feature. So if you do want a stylus, then definitely keep this in mind. And in my experience, the stylus on this phone is actually pretty good. If you're doing stuff like navigating through your display and things like that, it will get the job done. And even if you're trying to take like handwritten notes, get rid of this. As you can see, it's pretty responsive. It even has this little drawing sound, so if you're trying to do actual art, then obviously you're probably going to want to get something like the S23 Ultra. But if you're really just trying to use the stylus for more of a convenience kind of thing, it definitely will at least get the job done. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? Now honestly, this is a pretty close one. For stuff like the display and the camera and the battery, these phones are almost completely equal. But overall, while the A23 5G is definitely not a bad phone, and again, it's pretty close, I would personally say the Moto G Stylus 5G is the better phone here. With this device, we are getting quite a bit more storage, And remember, despite there technically being two different versions, depending on whether you get this phone unlocked or through a carrier, this phone is going to have either double or quadruple the storage of the A23 5G. So yeah, definitely a huge difference there. The Motorola can also record 4K videos, which, while there are plenty of Samsung Galaxy A series phones that can do this too, the A23 5G is not one of them. The Moto G Stylus 5G is also quite a bit faster, and despite not having quite as good software support, it does have a stylus, which is definitely a great feature to have. That being said though, these phones are really similar in a lot of different ways, and if you're really just looking for an affordable 5G phone for more basic activities, then especially if you can find a really good deal for it, the A23 5G is really not a bad choice either. But this concludes my comparison between the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G 2023 and the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G. Again, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.